All right. Hello, everybody. Fernando. If you haven't seen me today, or yesterday, that's I work at Bates. I'm a project scientist. I'm interested in bringing practices of open science to policy analysis, and that's pretty much what we're gonna be talking for the next, hopefully, less than 10 minutes. So there's something like 5 minutes for people to react. One caveat is that I would love to chat about this. I love to chat about this all the time, but I'm going to have to leave right away. But if you want to talk about it later on, please send me an email and happy to talk more, okay? So open policy analysis. This is based on a work, joint work that we have with Sean Grant here in the room and Ted Miguel. And basically, it's about a paper that provides a framework for open policy analysis, but also about a broader agenda on how to push these ideas in the space of policy analysis. First of all, what is policy analysis? It's somewhat it's a non-obvious term. A policy analysis is any empirical analysis that is meant to inform specific decision makers. This could be the Congress. This could be the executive office, a interest group, whatever, but the whole point is to inform a specific group about a specific set of policies. The idea, examples of this could be the Congressional Budget Office in the US, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, there's the Budget Office in Chile, that is called DIPRES, but that's from the Chilean acronym, it has nothing to do with it's a fantastic office, but they do this type of analysis too. They include cost-benefit analysis, micro-simulations, any type of empirical analysis is meant to inform specific policy decisions. So this is kind of like our starting point or our starting framework. The idea is that in an evidence-based policy world, we want researchers to uncover some type of truth, generate some type of knowledge, general purpose knowledge. So this is this knowledge that will inform several settings in different points in time. Typically, a researcher will uncover something about policies that have taken place in the past. This would be an impact evaluation or an intervention where they learn about the treatment effect of a specific policy that happened 5 years ago. Now we publish it, and now if we want to inform future policy decisions in a different setting, that's when policy analysis takes place. Basically, it takes the analysis takes the inputs from research as given, either through a specific parameter or through a meta-analysis, and it combines it in a cost-benefit analysis, micro-simulation, etc., etc. And in an ideal world, would inform different policymakers starting from the same set of facts. And different policymakers can and should make different decisions because they have different normative positions. They might weigh cost and benefits in a different way. And in an ideal world, we'll observe something like this, right? What we have been talking all over around open science, what's the focus of open science is basically this corner right here. It's a very important conversation to be having. Basically, we have talked about this all the time, and I'm not going to reiterate much, but the key issue from my perspective of what open science has done, it has identified, it has provided language to define specific set of problems like p-hacking, publication bias, replication problems, and it has come out with a set of systematic solutions. That's what we try to take away from open science. As there has been, unfortunately, in public policy, there's no such thing as a well-documented credibility crisis or reproducibility crisis. There's some commentary out there talking about incredible certitudes. This is the idea that a think tank would come out saying that a healthcare reform is going to cost $700 billion, and another one's going to say that it's going to save $300 billion, and nobody's going to reveal anything at what happens under that, and basically they're going to talk past each other. In political science, similar idea has been articulated under the term of report wars. The same idea is that you arrive to a table with different think tanks or different stakeholders with 300-page reports that basically talk past each other. And I think that the most concerning and worrying manifestation of this phenomenon nowadays is basically this whole expansion of popular literature around the problem of basically alternative facts or losing track in expertise. There's one of those coming every 3 months or something like that. So what's in this framework? How does that apply here? Basically, the link of audience of policy analysis is pretty opaque, and that's where we're trying to focus. Why is this relevant? It is relevant because if there are many policy reports out there, or even within a single policy report, there are many policy estimates, and it's not clear what is the closest representation of the facts, it's typical to observe how policymakers will cherry pick their preferred estimates or the preferred reports to match their normative positions. Another problem is that many of these analyses are recurrent in some shape or form, kind of asking what's the effect of minimum wage from 4 to 5. It's somewhat similar than from 7 to 10 and then from 10 to 15 and stuff like that. Moreover, across countries, these type of questions are somewhat similar too. So there are big gains, potential gains, we argue, in terms of opening up the materials and the analysis such that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you do one of this. And from the researcher perspective, it's somewhat hard. Even if you are a very policy applied researcher, it's very hard to know exactly the treatment effect that you estimated in this paper, how it was used in this report that is actually citing you. You might have an idea, but it goes into a black box that is very hard to understand, okay, exactly how they use my work. More important, prospectively, say that I want to study a new question in this domain. What are the big unknowns, or how would a marginal new piece of research change the current policy estimates? Those questions are somewhat unanswerable nowadays, and that's why we think that open policy analysis could be helpful. So our proposal, it's basically, first of all, a framework. This is the paper that we wrote that outlines basically 3 principles that are the principle of open output, open analysis, and open materials. I'll describe in a second. We're going to provide an example to make these things concrete, and also we propose an agenda of how to move forward along these lines. Basically, think of the current state of a policy analysis at best. It could be that a policy analysis would be just a single number in a budget line. That could and has been the case with nothing behind it. But let's take the best case scenario where there's a solid report behind it, I don't know, 200-page report, PDF report, or something like that you can review. We want to move from that standard to a standard where we don't provide a report, we provide a layered document. This layered document would be targeted to different stakeholders at different levels. So the first idea is that this layered document should have one clear output that condensates the best estimates, the best empirical estimates about the different costs and benefits associated with a policy. This could be a figure, this could be a table, preferably a figure, but the idea is that this should inform the different costs and benefits that the policymakers have to weight normatively. The underlying layer, and an example could be something like this. So this is a current case study that we're working on right now, assessing the cost effectiveness of deworming in different settings. And the idea is that there would be a central estimate of what's the net present value of implementing mass deworming, and what's the uncertainty around it. Where's the zero? And that gives you an idea. That's the information, and in this rather simple case that a policymaker should be observing. In a richer case, actually, you would observing the different costs and different benefits associated with it. Below that, we argue that, and these 2 first layers constitute the idea of open output. So the first idea is a unified, clear output. The second layer would be a clear link between input, the inputs of the model, and the output that is presented. So this would be an interactive tool in the best case scenario, where you would have the one output and you can change the underlying assumptions, the inflation rate, the discount rate, the treatment effect, all sorts of components that go into the analysis, and see reactively how the output changes. So best case scenario, everybody arrives to the table with the same output. Second best case scenario, people arrive to a table with different outputs, but they can pinpoint where the differences are, which is much different from nowadays, where it's this idea of talking through like parallel worlds. Third layer, tied to the principle of open analysis, and very timely. We just did a training on dynamic documentation. We suggest that the idea would be to have a complete dynamic document that has the narrative, the equations, and the code in one place, that documents how that second layer and first layer were produced, such that any expert from the specific topic can do a quick critical appraisal. Nowadays, if you are an expert, say in deworming, and you want to understand how this thing is used to estimate different relevant cost effectiveness, you need to, let me change that just to not distract us. You need to like jump into, if you're lucky, you need to jump into spreadsheets, trace numbers, understand what's going on, translate those numbers into equations, and spend weeks into untangling how your evidence is used in a policy analysis. This, we argue, is the way to reduce that workload from weeks into hours, to make a much fluid communication between policy analysis and research. And the final is basically the principle of open materials. The idea is to have a complete reproducible repository, which basically has so it has ideally a repository somewhere where you can download the repository and with minimal effort reproduce all the results that you find in the third layer, in the dynamic document. So the idea is that you will download it, very few clicks, find the whole thing, run it, and you get the final results. This is what we suggest should be the gold standards, or what to aim for, and we break it into these 3 principles associated with different stakeholders at different levels, and we operationalize it into different specific dimensions, pretty much following the top guidelines into something that's more modular and it can be improved upon layer by layer. So it's not that we need to achieve this gold standard right away, but there are steps to be taken to get there, and those are the dimensions that we break it upon. So just to make things concrete, I just want to show you very quickly the first case study that we finished up a few months ago about this is a policy analysis that was done by 2 economists at Berkeley. Two economists at Berkeley to support the idea of a wealth tax. And the key policy analysis here is to explain, estimate the revenue behind this tax. So this was a very good analysis that was produced by these researchers, but again, it wasn't PDF, kind of very well explained, but completely irreproducible. So basically we approached them and suggest, why don't we create a test case, and this is what came out of it. Following these 3 principles, what we have is an interactive tool that I think you click there and it's going to take you to this thing, which is an interactive tool that, again, this is that right there is the key policy estimate. $200 million are going to be collected, and this is the kind of the key assumption. This is the key assumption, that there's an evasion of 17%. You can change it like to 25. Update, and of course I'm gonna. And it's gonna change the total revenue, and also the structure of the the structure of the tax. You can change the structure of the tax over here. So that would be kind of like the first output, the 2 layers that I described all combined in one. The next one would be the layer with all the analysis. I just delete. So it's an open policy report over here. That this should look familiar to the people that we were just working on. This is just a dynamic document that explains everything, where it's coming from, and it has the code embedded, and it has pretty much everything that's going on in there. And the third one is going to get a GitHub repository that invite you for you guys to either download it, or you can clone it and then rerun, and you will get this layer, and you can modify things and see how things change. So that's the high level idea. And basically our plan moving forward is basically solidify this framework, through getting this paper published somewhere on the framework of open policy analysis. The next steps to build guidelines, that we have already some draft of those guidelines, and as with the top guidelines, we want to build consensus. So the more people who want to jump in and participate in this process, the better. And we want to build a sort of like an agenda of case studies. So there's one in the back burner about the minimum wage. That I'm not sure what's the future for that one. But right now we're working on one on deworming. Next year we're going to work on one behind the social cost of carbon, and some other one on income transfers. And next year, if you want to be part of it and participate of this, talk to me via mail, unfortunately. And another important component is to basically do in policy analysis what BITS is doing in the world of research, BITS and others are doing in the world of research, basically build a community of practice. So we're thinking about doing several presentations around OPA for our annual meeting, or at least a panel. Last year we did a panel where basically we try to showcase what other organizations are doing in this domain. There's a think tank in Washington, the American Enterprise Institute, that are moving definitely in this direction. There's an NGO that ranks charities that has some of these, GiveWell, that has some of these components in the sense that they open some of their analysis. And we just basically want to highlight more people doing this stuff. We want to build more momentum around it. And I think that's it. Yeah, great. Thank you.
We have time for
like one question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it's a really amazing tool. I guess just the question is, have you done any work with policymakers to see how they interpret these results? Is it accessible? Are they going to be worried that it's too technical for people, or what is the process there?
So that's basically the next step. One thing we are working right now on the deworming open policy analysis is that we are actively engaging with people who support policymakers on these decisions and trying to say what are the key outputs that we need to be showing. So this is part of the exercise, basically to don't write the report without the feedback of the consumer, the ultimate consumer, and try to, before we're going to do the analysis, try to pin down what are the key questions that you want. That's the model that we're exploring now. For the wealth tax, you can argue that the consumers was more like the general public, so that was a little harder. But for the deworming, we're going to try to pinpoint agencies in different countries.